we get to my sermon, which I don't do often, so forgive me if it's a little clunky, but I think it'll be all right. This is called Faith and the Great Pumpkin. Part of it I didn't write. I'm going to be sharing a lengthy essay, not written by me, within the sermon, but I will introduce that part. We don't tend to talk about faith much here, although faith is a major tenet of most religions. Oh, excuse me again. Getting old. I will talk about some examples of what most of us do have faith in a little later. When I was thinking about what to talk about today, I wanted to be in touch with a couple of subjects, one of them being the concept of faith. And also, since this is October and getting close to Halloween season, I wanted to include some of these themes as well. So I began to think about some of my favorite Halloween stories and seeing if any good examples of faith could be found there. I soon realized that the perfect story was right in front of me. A few months ago at our last book communion service, I was talking about some of the earliest books and stories that I loved as a child. Right up there were the Peanuts books. The comic strips of Charlie Brown and Lucy and Linus and Snoopy captured my imagination and led me to a lifetime love of cartoon art that continues to this day. Plus, it is currently the 75th anniversary of Charles Schulz publishing his first Peanuts comic strip. There were several cartoons made from the Peanut stories, and the early ones are still some of my all-time favorites. Who can forget that first one, A Charlie Brown Christmas? Lucy dying to be cast as the Christmas Queen, the classic Snoopy dance, and the poor little Christmas tree being turned into a beautiful holiday icon through the power of love. My brother and I watch these specials every year without fail. But the next one became my all-time favorite, the Halloween cartoon. It's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Oh my goodness, here we have an epic tale of faith as Linus waits in the pumpkin patch, the most sincere one that he can find, in the unrelenting belief that on Halloween night, the great pumpkin will appear. He even talks Sally, the young girl who is Charlie Brown's little sister and has an enormous crush on him, to wait with him in the pumpkin patch. He is sure that the great pumpkin will appear, this strange deity, this unknown figure, this fantastical, phantasmagoric phantasm. This Santa Claus-like creature would show up and bring toys and candy and goodies to all the little boys and girls. But one of the conditions of this appearance was faith. The people waiting for this divine appearance had to have faith. They had to have an unwavering faith that the great pumpkin would appear. If he sensed any doubt, he would pass you by and show up at a different pumpkin patch, perhaps inhabited by people who believed just a little bit stronger, who maybe, just maybe, had a faith that was more powerful than yours. Yes, this seemed like some fertile ground on which a sermon could be based. And yet, not confident in my own writing skills, I looked to see what other people may have written about this very subject. I found that I was not the first to explore this subject and search for spiritual meaning. I found some excellent essays exploring this very same material, so that I thought I might include one of them here. This will help me make my point and also allow me to share some writing that is better than my own. Now I will share an essay from Max Burbank. Begin essay. On October 27, 1966, CBS debuted an animated family Halloween special based on Charles Schulz's syndicated newspaper comic strip, Peanuts. While seemingly an innocuous children's cartoon, the themes on display were disappointment, alienation, neurosis, delusion, and despair. These were concerns Schultz gnawed over daily for decades on the funny pages of our nation's leading newspapers. But here in the half-hour animated special, they crystallized to a razor sharpness that 48 years later still cuts as cleanly and deeply as the first time it was unsheathed. We watch it annually. We memorize its rhythms. We could almost chant along. And so by repetition, we are desensitized to the childhood mundane human horror, which is the great pumpkin's true subject matter. The story is comprised of 3 character arcs. The events of a single Halloween night and the following morning as experienced by Linus Van Pelt, Charlie Brown, and the dog Snoopy. In this essay, I will examine each arc, arriving at some semblance of what I believe Schultz intended to convey through the narrative. Linus. Is Linus clinically insane? Certainly he is neurotic. He sucks his thumb, he carries a blanket. He is sickened by the Freudian image of his sister gutting a pumpkin. These almost Ibsen-esque weaknesses are taken as given, but does his belief in the great pumpkin indicate a diagnosable delusional state? How does Schultz intend us to see this? There are several distinct possibilities. Certainly, the great pumpkin is a parody of Santa Claus. Millions of children believe in a magical being in a flying sleigh, bringing an impossible number of gifts to an impossible number of people in a single, impossibly short amount of time. Since this is a culturally endorsed myth, children are encouraged to engage it, and so the question of mental health never arises. Here, though, Schultz grafts a similarly bizarre myth onto Halloween. Every year, the great pumpkin rises out of the pumpkin patch he finds the most sincere and flies through the air delivering toys to good boys and girls. But beyond removing the Santa myth from its usual context to illustrate its absurdity, what do we make of this? In Schultz's universe, has Linus created the great pumpkin myth himself? Does he assume that since Christmas has Santa, then Halloween must have something similar? Or are we to believe the practice of riding to and waiting for the great pumpkin, while rare compared with the practice of trick-or-treating, is recognized? Within the fictional universe of Peanuts, is Linus engaged in culturally sponsored make-believe, like Santa, or does Schultz intend us to see him as actively delusional? In the latter is the case, and Schultz offers no evidence to the contrary, his need to drag others into his belief system is disturbing. Linus exploits young Sally Brown's crush on him and tries to indoctrinate her into the quasi-religious practice of waiting for the great pumpkin. She, in turn, personifies childhood's fear of societal rejection. By believing in him, she has opened herself to ridicule, missed a group affirmation of tricks or treats, initially offers her love, but this is soon replaced with blame and threats. Their status roles now completely reversed, Linus's final emasculation comes in the form of a fainting spell when he believes he is having a religious experience and is witnessing the arrival of a god, but it is in fact merely looking at a dog. He will lie on the ground, alone and unloved, convinced of his own unworthiness. The great pumpkin did not come because he allowed himself an instant of doubt, saying, if the great pumpkin comes, instead of when. This hairline crack in his perfect faith is all it takes for him to be cast out, and it is here he is found and taken in late that night by his sister. This would seem comforting, but think, where are his parents? It is Halloween night, and they are outdoors. Their child has not returned home. He is in fact sleeping alone outdoors. Where are the police? No, it falls to his sibling, a child herself, to care for him. In Schultz's universe, any appeal for adult succor goes unanswered. They exist but are always unseen and non-functional. Producer Bill Melendez exploits this alienation to advantage by rendering adult voices as unintelligible bleats on a muted trumpet. Charlie Brown, initially elated at having been invited to a Halloween party, is soon informed the invitation is a mistake. Not content to leave his alter ego isolated by simple exclusion, Schultz makes his singularly public through the ruse of a further mistake. His Halloween costume, a bedsheet ghost with multiple eye holes. A self-inflicted wound, he had trouble with the scissors. On a second level, as eyes are seen in literature as the windows of the soul, Brown has externalized his vulnerability. His soul is raw, open, unprotected. Compare his shame to Pigpen, similarly individualized by his omnipresent cloud of filth. His pride and obvious healthy self-esteem serve to cast Brown's self-loathing in high relief. It is while trick-or-treating, however, that we see the true depths of Brown's predicament. At each stop, as the costumed children describe their treats, we learn Brown has received, instead of candy, a rock. What conclusions is Schultz inviting us to draw with these rocks? Are we to assume the unseen, unreachable adults recognize Brown's innate lack of human worth? Or is the universe itself casting him out? Does candy undergo a miracle of reverse transubstantiation, passing from food, the stuff of life, to rock, unlife, inside his trick-or-treat bag? Where Linus believes he is punished for sin and weakness, Brown is punished simply for existing. Later at the party, Lucy will use his head as a model for a jack-o'-lantern, a concrete demonstration that Brown is a non-person. Think back to the opening scene where Lucy gutted a pumpkin and Linus accused her of killing it. Is she metaphorically killing Charlie Brown now? Or are we meant to see her use of Brown as model pumpkin as a declaration that Linus's moral inclinations have no function in the world as it is? And yet it is Lucy, the ultimate denier of the peace, who alone demonstrates compassion when she later retrieves Linus from the pumpkin patch, delivering from the place of his humiliation and failure to home and safety. Is Schultz's point that one can only truly engage altruism from a point of amorality? After all, Brown, the everyman, never even thinks to look for Linus. Perhaps this weakness is all the justification needed for his lowest of all tribal status. Snoopy. In Snoopy, Schultz presents the classic wise fool as alternative. With this dog, there is no line between fantasy and reality. What he imagines, in this case that he is a World War I flying ace, simply is, for as long as the belief suits him. When the time seems right, belief is abandoned without guilt. Compare this to the agony suffered by Linus over his crisis of faith, or Brown's utter helplessness. It is worth noting that the exact moment Snoopy abandons his hero fantasy is his kiss with Lucy, a kiss that utterly, if briefly, destroys her status mastery. Snoopy is free of guilt, free from expectation, immune to claims of tribal status, but Snoopy is a dog. He can ape humanity, but is not human. Linus and Brown are allowed to see the successful alternative he represents, but are barred from embracing it by their essential nature. Like Brown's ersatz party invitation, Snoopy's lifestyle is a reward that is never truly on offer. Conclusion. In the universe of peanuts, can one hope for growth or change? Sadly, no. In the closing scene, Brown assumes the experience in the pumpkin patch has caused Linus to abandon faith and embrace a more existential approach. Linus is insulted. His faith is, if anything, stronger, and why shouldn't it be? Linus and Brown both come to the same unrewarding end. No toys for the unfaithful Linus, no candy for the unlucky Brown. Why learn this lesson of experience if it yields nothing? False hope trumps nihilism because false hope it may be, it is still hope. In the end, it is the struggle for sincerity and not sincerity itself that makes the pumpkin patch truly worthy. End essay. So, Linus had great faith, but what he was most hoping for did not happen. His God, the great pumpkin, did not show up. He blamed himself for his lack of faith. What lesson does this give us? Is faith enough, or does it also take action? What do we as Unitarian Universalists have faith in? Some believe that there is a higher power, a spirit, a force, a God, and some do not. I personally, and this is just me, do not believe that there is any supernatural being watching us or looking out for us or guiding our actions. It seems to me, again, this is just my own observation, that the one thing we all seem to have faith in is that someday the arc of the universe will turn toward justice. We hope for this even though right now there is not much evidence that it will ever happen. Every now and then there is an advancement and it looks like peace and justice are making progress, but then we have a fascist administration and that pendulum swings backwards, taking away most of the positive progress that has happened over the last few decades. But I do still have hope. I do believe that in the future, though it may indeed be centuries from now, we will have a society based on peace and justice. This is faith. A few weeks ago, Reverend Eric brought up a future history represented in the television program Star Trek, that someday humanity will come together in total peace and happiness. I do not have faith that this will ever happen, but I do still have hope. Is hope for the future enough? Hoping is fine, but more than that, we must also take action. Many of us work toward making this future a reality. Some of our members put their dedication and sweat into this goal on a daily basis. Think again to our No Kings rally yesterday and all the people here who put so much work into that. Others of us also work toward making this future a reality, maybe in smaller, more personal ways. This is what we do. This is the good fight. Changing the future takes more than faith alone because, as Linus experienced in the story, the great pumpkin never showed up.